Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good morning, my Cafecito colleagues. We made it. We made it, and I'm so thrilled you're here this morning. I am very excited to be hosting Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez. Miss Incredible. She is a living legend in the New Mexico educational and diversity landscape. We're a few minutes late. Excuse me, I think we're going to have a great show. I'm all choked up for you, Jennifer.
Yay. Buenos días.
Buenos días, de Dios.
Sí, buenos días de Dios.
All right. All choked up. Hey, so Facebook and Zoom didn't want to play nicely this morning. I think they were out of practice because I've had so many conflicts this last week, but what a great way to start my week with you, Jennifer. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here.
Well, it is going to be a very enriching morning. It's now 5 minutes or 6 minutes after the hour now, and we are going to get started. Normally, as you know, I put up a bunch of links, but we had to restart everything again because Zoom and Facebook weren't cooperating. But that gives us just a little more time to visit because I could take any single really area of impact in your life and spend an hour with you visiting because you're so remarkable. But I will just say that I'm coming off a great weekend. Yesterday, speaking of living legends, a man that has had about 30 years worth of impact and influence on my life. He's a former state legislator, former principal of a school in Las Cruces after being an educator, and truly one of New Mexico's living legends. We celebrated and honored him for his 100th birthday. And of course, that's the Honorable J. Paul Taylor of Mesilla, New Mexico. Phenomenal human being who will live on for generations to come through his, not just his work and his impact, but he did really something phenomenal many years ago. He, over time, took a love for New Mexico's heritage and history, specifically in art forms and education, whether it be bilingual education, where he was one of the leaders and original advocates for honoring our state's constitution, which makes New Mexico the only bilingual state in the union. But he really took a deep dive and embraced Spanish colonial art forms. And in his home in Mesilla, which is a historic home in the historic registry, he has one of the largest private collections of Spanish colonial art from so many artists, whether it's people like our regular Cafecito colleague, Adan Carriaga, or the many artists that do bultos and retablos and that do textile work and weaving. He has really, I'm sure he has a piece of Macacius clay, all these Spanish colonial art forms that we celebrate through the Spanish Colonial Art Society. He has representations in his home with one of the largest private collections. He has, and he did this many years ago, he has bequeathed his home and his collection to the state of New Mexico upon his passing. And I've spent many hours in his home, and it's a beautiful, calm place, traditional adobe, literally built into the square of Mesilla, the town square. So we celebrated his 100th birthday. Some of you may have saw my post. I found a good half dozen pictures with him over the last 10 or 20 years that I was able to put together and post and honor him. So that was great. If you don't know anything about J. Paul Taylor, the J. Paul Taylor Society through the New Mexico Landmarks Division, I think they've got several endowments that have been built in his honor to support that gift to the state. Anyway, thank you. I love you, J. Paul Taylor. I love you, Mary Helen Ratchie, for always allowing him to engage with me deeply. And she is always by his side. Phenomenal, phenomenal human being. I will also point out that today in the Albuquerque Journal, there are many incredible stories that I had links to, but don't have them for you now. But I did feature, or one of the links I put up was the one-on-one today is with a Cafecito guest, one of the only guests in the last 5 months who's been a two-timer. She's been a two-timer on Cafecito con Colon. It's Kathy McGill, and she is really wonderfully featured in the one-on-one today in the Albuquerque Journal. The other story that is of importance and particularly relevant as we bring on Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez today, it speaks to the underscoring of the racial history with Latinos and interactions with law enforcement. And so there's a very important story on the front page of the Albuquerque Journal today that talks about the intersectionality of the discussion we're having regarding Black Lives Matter. And I think one of the unintended consequences, at least I think if you spoke to the women who founded the Black Lives Matter movement 7 years ago, I think they would agree it was probably an unintended consequence. But one of the unintended consequences is the ability to now provide, as we continue to focus deeply and very intentionally on the importance of Black Lives Matter and its movement, the residual benefit is the space that it has created for other marginalized communities to be heard. Whether they be Indigenous women who've been murdered and not received the attention that they needed, or whether it be the Hispano-Latino community and some of the deep and long-standing ingrained issues for that community. These are the residual benefits of the Black Lives Matter movement and providing a platform and a space and a place for those of us who are more intentionally listening to be able to be listening to some of these other issues. So I thought those were a couple of really important stories in here today. They also highlight some great CEOs in the Business Outlook section today, and one of whom featured with a great photograph is another good friend of Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez. You'll find, well, there's lots of good friends in here, like Joni Griffith of Sunny 505 and Tony Zancanella of the Opera Southwest, who's done some trailblazing work when he produced the opera of Bless Me Ultima. And I think Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez would remember that. We all rallied around that effort. But the person I wanted to highlight too is, and now I can't find, Debbie Harms is in here. There's so many great folks in here today. Now I can't find them. Anyway, Ernie Sidabaca is featured in here somewhere. I can't find the right page. And so with that, let me turn my focus to my beloved, longstanding friend. She practically, God brought us together practically my first week at the University of New Mexico as a student at the law school. I learned about this legend who was an advisor at the time, I think for the college enrichment program, because this goes back 20 some odd years, long before she was the famous Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez. She was just a person on campus who in every way and every day, she made a difference in the lives of students. And I was fortunate enough to be in student leadership at the campus, and we quickly found each other and identified that we had several similar passion points. And her love of New Mexico, her love of students and academic success for those who systemically found themselves on the edge always, whether it be because of resources, family conditions, or simply being unsophisticated yet passionate individuals with a vision for education, but no one in their family had ever been down that road. So they didn't have the familial support that is often so necessary and required for success in higher education. And Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez decided she was going to make a difference in that space, and she really did that. And I'm going to bring this native New Mexican to visit with us this morning here in a minute, but when I looked online about her journey and her travels and her impact, I could literally spend the next 45 minutes that we have just speaking to her story and telling you. And I'm going to try and limit this introduction, but it's not easy to do that because she has had, nearly 3 decades of incredible service to New Mexico. She is a native New Mexican. She came from a place where there weren't a ton of people who looked like her. And it wasn't always an environment that was comfortable for a young lady with her background who had the parents that she had and had the story that she had. Southern New Mexico is a place that we don't speak to specifically as it relates to the Hispano experience in New Mexico. And I think we're going to visit a little bit about that today, if Jennifer will allow us to explore that a little bit. But she came from Hagerman, New Mexico, and most folks don't even know where Hagerman is. If they've heard of it, they're not sure where it is, but it's a beautiful community. My connection to Hagerman was when I was a student at Los Lunas High School. I was very involved in student council, and I was the class president, the student body president, but I was also involved in an organization called the New Mexico Association of Student Councils. And we had a convention and workshops every year on student leadership. And so student council associations would come from all over the state. And Hagerman, this tiny community, had a very robust student government. And it was because they had this, and I've not been able to remember her name, but she was the student council advisor, and she was elderly in the 80s, and she had this perfect hairdo. I remember her silver gray hair, and she had this incredible warmth that lent itself to young people in a way that was very special. There were hundreds of advisors at the convention, but I feel like every year I always remember connecting with her and her students from Hagerman, and they always made me feel seen and special and significant. And I've never forgotten her. I wish I could remember her name. And one of these days we're going to research, Dr. Gomez Chavez and I are going to go look up the records to figure out who the student counselor was, or the advisor was for student government at Hagerman in the late 80s. But anyway, that's my connection to Hagerman. And then I've met lovely individuals since. But the loveliest individual I've ever met from Hagerman, and one of the loveliest individuals in New Mexico, is Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez. She has 30 years of experience working with low income and students from underrepresented backgrounds through her positions with the LULAC National Educational Service Center and the University of New Mexico. She holds a bachelor's in criminal justice, a master's in counseling, and a doctorate in educational leadership. And indeed, she is a leader in education. This year, Jennifer is starting the second half of her 3rd decade, and she works at UNM's Health Sciences Center as the special assistant to the a special assistant to the Associate Vice Chancellor for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. In her present role, she's also the Executive Director of the Unidos Project, Central Region Director for Enlace New Mexico. And if you saw my promo for her this morning, you'll see that the other half of the dynamic duo, the person who's always at her side, another incredible force of encouragement and warmth. And I'm going to have him on one of these days if he'll allow me. He is the shy half, in my opinion, of the dynamic duo. He is always taking in the background and always uncomfortable when the spotlight is on him. But he and Dr. Gomez Chavez always receive the most glowing, the strongest rounds of applause when we do introductions, because they have the deepest impact on students at UNM. And the second half of the dynamic duo is Dr. Lawrence Roybal. And he's in the promo photos for today, this morning, that I put up. But they work together at Enlace, New Mexico. She's helped Unidos receive accolades and recognition from the White House initiatives on educational excellence for Hispanics. In 2000, she's let me just tell you, during her tenure, she's taught for almost a dozen years. And this is so appropriate because she has taught at the University of New Mexico The Psychology of Hope. And somebody who I think would really enjoy that curriculum is Lynn Troyon, who really helped me become a philanthropist and understand myself in an even better way. And this philosophy of hope is so powerful, and she lives it every day. In 2008, she, another important part of her work and impact is her highly renowned and award-winning efforts to eliminate multiple sclerosis. And her work with the MS Society has been an inspiration for countless individuals to step up and give. And I did that this morning already. I've already made my contribution this morning as she's cycling to a world free from MS. Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez for years has been cycling to a world free of MS. And since 2008, she was diagnosed with MS, and she travels the whole country advocating for the differently abled as a way to inspire others to never give up. And she not only inspires people never to give up, but she inspires us to give. And so this morning, I'm going to try and post a link to her contribution page to help support her next ride for MS. And I want to say welcome to this LULAC Woman Hall of Fame, Albuquerque Business First Woman of Influence, Alliance for Hispanic Serving Institution Educators Founding Member Award. And the names of these awards go on and on and on, whether it's the New Mexico Hispano Roundtable Legislative Advocacy Walking the Talk Award, or the National MS Society induction into the Volunteer Advocacy Hall of Fame. But most special, she is a Cologne family beloved friend and member. There is no one that gets talked about in this household by my wife as it relates to her educational journey than Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez. Aleli's working on her dissertation. Aleli will be a PhD probably in 1 year. And the fingerprints on her PhD will clearly show that Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez has changed my wife's life, and she's changed mine. Welcome, Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here with you. And I want to say hermano, because I do feel that we have been connected for many, many years with you and your beautiful family. So thank you for having me.
Well, you bet, you bet. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that you're also in my mom, or in my mom, boy, I don't know where that came from. I guess my mom's thinking about me this morning. God bless her. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that you're also in my son's Fave 5. He loves you very much too. Rafael always loves your smile and your positive approach. Let's get started this morning. Dr. Gomez Chavez, we could take this 40 minutes in so many places, and I'm going to try and probably have you on another time in the months to come. But let's start with you just telling us a little bit about your background, because I also failed to mention one of the ways we get to work together so closely is through the Hispanic Heritage Committee. And let us not be remiss to take this morning's opportunity to announce Hispanic Heritage Month coming up and your work there. But I'd like to really start on a personal note for you to tell me a little bit about what created the beautiful, complex, and passionate lens that you look through on a daily basis. What is it in your upbringing, and what led you to this life's work that you do every single day?
Well, I think that, as I tell students and my mentees and anybody, my team who I work with, is never forget where you're from. And so as you mentioned, I'm from the beautiful small town, rural community of Hegerman, New Mexico. I also want to mention I'm from Artesia too, because I graduated from Artesia that has, a legacy of community and sports. And so I do want to mention that, but going back to my upbringing, I want to start with my parents. My mother came over to the US with my grandmother. My grandmother was offered a work permit to come from her beautiful country of Mexico. And her sister was already here working in Artesia. And so the Yates family and Wards, who are very well known in southeastern New Mexico, asked my grandmother to come over. And so my grandmother brought my mother. And it took them many, many years before they became citizens. And then on my dad's side, my dad is a Gomez. And in Hagerman and Artesia, they're very well known because it's a big family. He comes from a family of 10. And they own the Gomez Club. And anybody who knows Hagerman and Artesia, the Gomez Club was a place where you could go and eat Mexican food. So my grandparents, his parents, started the Gomez Club, and often I would go as a young child to work there. So I feel like through my parents' lens, their experiences, their struggles, my mother having to be disciplined for not speaking English immediately on her arrival to southeastern New Mexico, as well as, I see my grandparents who owned the Gomez Club. It was a safe haven. When I later grew up, I looked back and I even wrote about it in graduate school on how that was a safe haven for a lot of our Hispanic, Mexicano, Latino families that were out working in the fields. But yet other families, right, other white and Anglo families would come because that was basically the only place that you could get Mexican food. And so, and till this day, the Gomez family still exists, Brian. So if you're ever in the area, they, well, not right now with the pandemic, but every weekend, they have a dance, a live band, Mexican music, people go and dance. And so, through my experience, seeing my parents, their struggles and their successes, because my mother went on to become a successful bilingual teacher in Dexter, then in Artesia. My father was a well-known business person. Both of them earned their degrees at Eastern New Mexico University. And they became advocates. My mom, because of her role in bilingual education, saw how a lot of students were misplaced just because of the language barrier. A lot of them were placed into special education. So she felt that a lot of parents who didn't speak English didn't have somebody to advocate for them. And my dad, even as a business owner, right, he experienced some challenges as well. So seeing them get involved in LULAC and in other organizations, really inspired me to know how important it is to advocate for those who have who are underrepresented, those who feel powerless, those who actually are in fear of speaking up, because in small communities like Hagerman and Artesia, everybody knows everything about each other. Right. And so there are, if you speak up and out, sometimes you're seen, not in a good light, you're seen as causing trouble. But we know that was good trouble, right? So, and then seeing my grandparents in their restaurant, just my grandmother, Estela Gomez and Fermin Gomez, they never, ever shut the door on that restaurant to anybody. Everybody was welcome. And this was at a time where, right, Hispanics, Mexicans, Latinos couldn't go into those restaurants in Carlsbad, Artesia, even some places in Roswell. I mean, the doors were shut, but theirs were wide open. So having those examples really led me to be passionate about just fighting for people who don't feel that they have the power to be at the table or to voice their concerns. So it's been such an incredible upbringing. And I'm going to tell you that really when I was a child, when you're a child, you don't realize it, right? I think you heard me the other day on a community conversation that Mayor Keller and the city's having about our differences on culture and race and history and heritage. But, you know, I didn't think much of it until, you know, one day, one of a person in Artesia, one of my peers was interested in dating me and told me, you know, I really want to be with you. Let's date. But my parents can never, ever know that I'm dating a Mexican. And I think I was a sophomore or junior in high school. And that stood out to me because it reminded me that no matter how educated I was or my parents were, or how successful my grandparents were, in some eyes of individuals, I was never going to be accepted. So those are things I think that shape us, inform us, and I'm always rooting and helping the underdogs.
Well, you do it in a way that is so authentic, and it's because of that story that you have. And I think it was important for us to start there. And thank you for sharing that with us. And I know that since then there are many broken hearts of men that would have been happy to present you to their family, but you were so focused on other areas they didn't have a shot. But you are incredible, and thank you for bringing that story to us and helping us understand what drives Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez. There are so many people. We've got 35, 40 people watching this morning, and everybody's giving you so much love here. Marianne Shirley Romero Soto talks about the Gomez brothers went to LULAC convention in San Antonio, and she remembers the bus stopping at the Gomez's very early in the morning to pick them up and raising money for scholarships always. Other folks are saying, she also said there were many fun times at the Gomez family, and just a lot of love for you and for your family. Fermin, thank you for your kind words about Dr. Gomez Chavez. Irma Ruiz, your co-chair of the Hispano Heritage Committee, that you two do so much great work with that. And of course, she's sending lots of love. Roberta Simoni, Patricia L. Chavez, Patricia Dickinson. I know that's your sister right there. And Valerie Martinez, Teresa Sherman. Thanks to everybody who's joined us this morning. Andrew Jaramillo, my commander in waiting. Dr. Roybal was able to join us this morning too. So I hope he came on early enough for him to hear the love I gave him, because I love you both very much. Julia Jones, thank you for stopping by, and Peggy and Bernadette, and we appreciate it so much. Tell us a little bit about kind of what it looked like and that progression from being a leader in an area where I think universities to this day continue to struggle. And I say universities, and I mean universities. I don't mean just UNM. I don't mean just New Mexico State, where I went before I went to UNM Law, because Rafael just graduated from George Washington University after being an Albuquerque High Bulldog. He just got his biomedical engineering degree. He's now working for AMRI, a biomedical engineering company here in Albuquerque, worldwide corporation that's also got a big plant here. But an area that they've never been able to really get right. And I think CNM actually does a much better job. Thank you to the leadership there. We know who really took that institution to the next level. I hope Kathy's doing well. Little shout out to Kathy. But advising is like the weak underbelly or the Achilles heel of the university system coast to coast. I don't care whether you're paying $70,000 a year in tuition at George Washington, or whether you're here at UNM paying, well, I think it's up to somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000 a year at UNM now for tuition and fees. Advising is brutal. Like, students continue to struggle, but you made a difference and really did a great job in that department. That's where you started. And now you're all the way up working with the Vice Chancellor of the Health Sciences Center, focusing on your passion point of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tell us about what that looked like, and maybe some of the positive changes you've seen, because when you started, no one even knew how to put those three words together: diversity, equity, and inclusion. 30 years ago, people weren't talking about that. You maybe had Cheo Torres, Dr. Torres, our vice president, who was a trailblazer in terms of being a vice president of a Division I university, who was also a man of color. He talked about it a bit, but there was never any real deep conversations, and certainly not a structural opportunity for somebody like you to make a difference in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Talk to us a little bit about that transformation you've seen.
Yeah, so I just want to go back to my high school, my senior year. A gentleman, Curtis Hunter, went to the school and was recruiting students to the University of New Mexico. And at that time, I had my eyes on West Texas State, Texas Tech, and other schools because my goal was to become, a lot of people don't know this, but I'm also a ballerina. I still dance today,
Quick
but
shout
I
out to
wanted to be
Patricia.
a professional dancer.
And I have seen you in your
Yeah.
glory doing ballet. And shout out to Patricia, who's with us this morning.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, the reason I mentioned that is that Curtis Hunter, a tall African-American advisor with the college enrichment program, went into Artesia High School, would visit periodically, and was trying to recruit students into the University of New Mexico. Now, my brother had already went through the college enrichment program, but I didn't see UNM as a possibility because I had this dance career. But I'm going to tell you, seeing Curtis, that was a person of color like me, I felt like, okay, I think UNM is more diverse because I had gone to visit West Texas State. I had gone to visit Texas Tech. I'd gone all over, and I wasn't seeing people like me. And having my own experiences growing up, as well as, witnessing some of the experiences my family had gone through, I actually ran to the University of New Mexico. Plus, I got an academic scholarship, which is great. So, I came through college enrichment and I was at the orientation, and here there were Dennis Branch, Gilbert Montoya, Curtis Hunter, these males, Latino males, helping students. Dr. Dan Chavez, they had created this wonderful program, and it started back in 1969 to actually diversify the University of New Mexico. So back then there wasn't much recruitment going on, right? There was recruitment of one type of student, but there wasn't a recruitment to recruit diverse students, and those from rural communities, those from underrepresented backgrounds, low income. And so SEP actually was developed to recruit students and began to diversify the University of New Mexico. And so I'm so excited about being a part of that legacy.
And SEP, for people that don't know the great acronyms in higher education, SEP is the college enrichment program that Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez is referencing. Go ahead.
Yeah, and SEP was a recruitment retention program for people from underrepresented and diverse backgrounds, because UNM was looking forward to here we are in New Mexico, a diverse state, but how do we recruit more diverse students? So I say that story because I still remember being inspired at my freshman orientation, thinking, one of these days I would love to be a Curtis, a Gilbert Montoya, a Dennis Branch. I still remember that, but then I put that aside, and then I was so focused on becoming an attorney, because having grown up in southeastern New Mexico, I felt like a lot of people from underrepresented backgrounds were going to jail or prison innocent. They were being marked with different crimes that they didn't cause. That was my opinion. And then after having worked in the Bernalillo County Detention Center, which is a more formal term called the jail, I decided that, the prisons and jail systems were filled with individuals that looked like myself. And I was like, we need to be educated. We need to shift into, other pathways of our of, of, of opportunities. And so that's what inspired me to do counseling and then go into educational leadership. And so after, you know, getting my master's in counseling, I was at the time working for LULAC National Educational Service Center. And so then after finishing my master's, I was recruited by UNM to go and work for the college enrichment program, the very program like 10, 12 years earlier that or maybe it was sooner than that, 6, 7 years earlier, that I had thought, you know, wow, this would be something amazing to be a part of. So I believe, going back to your original question, is that CEP, El Centro de la Raza, which is our for Hispanic, Latino, Mexicano student services, our Native American student services, our African American student services, our Women's Resource Center, all of those started at the same time back in like 1969. So working together, I believe all those centers, you know, really created that momentum to hire people that look more diverse so that students who are coming in from diverse backgrounds could relate to those individuals and say, you know what, I do belong here. And then having the support systems. We all know that there are so many barriers for all students, but in particular for those from underrepresented, you know, backgrounds, low income, you know, there are barriers on academics, the preparedness, the financial barriers, just the navigation, the barriers in navigating systems of higher education, because, you know, I was blessed that my parents did have college degrees. I was not first generation, but there are other, you know, communities and that don't understand the terms, the terminology. They get lost. There's so much anxiety around it because it is a different language. It is an entirely different process, a lot different than high school. And so I believe that, you know, with a growing more diverse student population, we started to see more services, right? And then when you look at the federal government started to invest more into higher education institutions, into Hispanic serving institutions, into minority serving institutions, into historically Black colleges, with the goal to recruit. You can recruit many, many students, but the number one challenge and issue is always, how do you keep them? How do you retain them in those difficult pathways, right? Because when you look at the demographics of the faculty makeup, and you spoke of the administrators, the role models in administration, you look at those and many times they're not as diverse as their student population, right? You can talk to students who say, I went through college and I never was taught by a person of color. And so I believe that, you know, that these offices of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as the diverse student population continue to grow, there needed to be an office to say, you know, where's the equity in hiring practices? How do we keep faculty of color retained? How do we make sure that staff, you know, have equitable hiring practices and safe and welcoming climates? Because, you know, our jobs are basically our place, our homes. They're our second homes, even though some of us feel like it's our first home because we're always there. But, you know, and so I think that those offices are really key because we have to bring to light the inequities that have happened for many, many years. And these offices continue to push for fair and equitable practices, hiring, climate, processes that students feel that they can be successful, right? And so, sorry, I talked long on that, but I think it's important for people to see how, history has brought us here to the forefront. And yet, those offices are still being compromised, right? Because some people don't believe in them. But luckily, and I do want to say that under the direction of Dr. Valido Meadow-Leggett, who is our Vice Chancellor, and Brian, I'm not sure if you know, but actually Dr. Lawrence Roybal is actually our Associate Vice Chancellor. So we have a great team that constantly keeps our eyes. What does our healthcare workforce look like? How can we recruit more students of color to become doctors, to become nurses, to become, going into the health profession, because our nation is becoming more diverse. Right. And so we need to reflect those numbers, and we need to help students succeed in all areas. Number one, getting their undergraduate degrees, but number two, pushing them to believe that they can reach their full potential.
I think that's exactly right. And I think you were innovative, and I appreciate Rodney highlighting your work for training young men at UNM in coaching to ask powerful questions to assist their peers, because people don't realize it, but you've been very intentional about advancing a model that has now proven to be one of the most effective models, and that is peer-to-peer counseling, advising, and support. And you were kind of on the front edge of that, you and Dr. Roybal, really understanding the power of peer-to-peer mentorship. And we all like to fancy ourselves as mentors. And as you know, it's one of my life passions. And it's one of the most enriching parts of my life. But we know that mentors who are losing their hair may be effective with getting students to resources, but the most effective models include a component of peer-to-peer mentorship. And I know you've been a longstanding advocate for that.
Yes, and thank you because I didn't quite answer your entire question about the advisement. So, advisement used to be basically prescribed. Come in, these are the classes that you're going to take, go away, good luck. And now we see holistic advisement, and which includes some coaching, right? Because, advisors, they can't have all the answers. It's what the students feel most comfortable with. It's what their goals are and dreams are. So the goal of the advisor is to help the student really discover their different options and try to help them reach their goals. So it's holistic. It's really getting to know the student. One thing that I loved about the college enrichment program, where I believe I received the best training, is that everything and anything about the student. You get to know them personally. You get to know their family. You get to know what inspires them. You get to know their biggest fears. You really get to know them, their community, and you meet them where they're at. And I think that sometimes in advising, there's a power dynamic, but in holistic and in coaching, you're at the same level, and you share those powerful stories, and you let them know that you've been there before. And just because you have a doctorate, or you have a master's, or you have a degree, that no matter what, like, you're in this together. And you use your own stories as an inspiration to help motivate and keep their momentum going. And so advising has changed. It's very holistic. Now, I believe in peer-to-peer. I think it's really powerful. What I am now advocating for is cross-generational mentoring and coaching, because, we see great leaders that are being formed. We see any young individual. We want them to aspire to their greatest potential. So I believe, like what you've been doing, Brian, thank you so much for inspiring so many younger students, right, to continue to have that will and motivation. And then with peer-to-peer, I want to also highlight in Enlace, New Mexico, we just celebrated 20 years. Congratulations to Dr. Lawrence Roybal as the executive director. But, you know, we've been using the model where we hire undergraduate college students, place them into high schools. So we're in 6 high schools right now in Albuquerque, where we are actually helping students stay in high school, you know, reach their high school graduation, and then transition into higher ed. So the power of coaching and mentoring is phenomenal.
No question. And you've been a leader in that long before it was a cool thing to talk about. And you continue to be on the cutting edge. And now with that cross-generational mentorship and coaching, I think that that's going to be the next powerful model that you'll stand up. And I'll be there to support you with that. Anything I can do, you know, I'm always in your corner. Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez, an incredible leader at the University of New Mexico. Thank you for your work with the Chancellor and with the Associate Chancellor, our dear friend and beloved Dr. Lawrence Roybal. Let's talk a little bit about your work. I want to make sure that we get to do this because I want to offer up for folks that send me an email, and I'll put my email in the thread. Anybody who makes a $25 contribution today to your ride for MS will get a beautiful Cafecito con Colón coffee mug as soon as they're done. We've been having trouble getting them produced. It's been a journey, but we're going to get them done. Thanks to Jonathan Muniz for being the original person who put me together with this. And on the other side, he put my quote that I give so often, that you are a living representation of, and that is something I say often, which is your success in life will always be directly proportional to the success you help others achieve. And you have been wildly successful because you have helped so many of us be able to enjoy our own success. And you have been a part of our journey, and we're all so grateful. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, going back 12 years. And if we go back to 2008, you had already been deeply woven into the educational landscape of New Mexico and making a difference at UNM and having all your professional colleagues and partners, and already had acquired so many of us that loved you dearly. You received some news that really kind of rocked your world. And maybe you can speak about that a little bit this morning.
Sure. So actually, Brian, I was diagnosed in 1995.
Oh, no, 2008 is when you...
Then, well, let me tell you my story because it's interesting. So I was first diagnosed in 1995. I was actually I think I was about 27, you know, engaged, you know, getting ready to start, you know, thinking about my career, future, my aspiration of becoming someday a university president. So 1995 diagnosed. Then I was de-diagnosed in 2000 because I went finally to a specialist who told me, after being completely like bummed out for 5 years, I thought, okay, I got to get a hold of this. And I went to Dr. Corey Ford, and he looked at me and he said, "You look perfectly healthy. You're fine." He said, "I'm right now dealing with patients that can't see, that can't walk, that can't eat, that can't talk." He said, you are functional right now. I'm going to de-diagnose you because I don't have any medication that fits your current level of MS. And so I'm going to go ahead and de-diagnose you. So go out and live the greatest life. And when you get really sick, come back. So that's what happened is after 2000, I went and it was great to get that off my mind that I, you know, didn't have MS, even though I knew I had it. And then I received my final diagnosis in 2008. And I received that because I went to Mexico. A university in Cuernavaca had asked me to do some student success programming out there for them. So I went out for a quick turnaround trip, didn't get much sleep. I get back, and 2 days later, from my neck, or actually from my face, on my left face side went completely numb. I thought I had had a stroke. And then a couple days after that, from my neck all the way down to my feet went numb. I couldn't even walk. So I had had a major MS attack. And I went to a neurologist, and after doing a spinal tap and another MRI, he diagnosed me with MS. So I quickly started injectable medication. So for 10 years, I would give myself injections 3 times a week. So when I was diagnosed, as you said, I was devastated. I thought I was going to die, because when you don't know anything about MS, you think your life is over, completely over. And I reached out to the MS Society here in New Mexico, and they put me in contact with a similar person who was diagnosed, who was administrator at the University of New Mexico, Dr. Caitlin Anderson, and she mentored me. And talk about the power of mentorship. She told me it's going to be okay. I was worried. I didn't come out for a while to the university because, I was climbing up, and I thought, oh my God, they're going to say that I have a disability. I'm going to lose my job. I was so worried I was going to lose my job or be treated differently. But it wasn't anything what I thought. So it turned out wonderfully. Dr. Caitlin Anderson helped me from determining my medication to getting involved with the MS Society. And she's like, you need to get involved with the government relations. And so since then, I've like Pitbull says, I've turned my negative into a positive.
Right.
And I felt like I had to do that to survive, to mentally survive, as I was, still with aspirations with my career, as well as raising a family.
Right. And then tell us about your incredibly well received and applauded work in terms of developing resources to help the MS Society push back. And I know that, like I said, I posted and pinned the comment that has the link to donate to Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez's page. If you do that and you email me your contribution email, I will get you a Cafecito con Colon mug. I've already made my contribution this morning. I do it every year. And tell us about that work.
Well, first of all, I want to invite people to join my team. For our team, Jorge Enriquez is also a person living with MS, a former UNM football player, but his MS is very progressive. So he's the lead of our team, but it's Unstoppable MSers. So please join our team to ride on September 26th, and you can ride in your house, in the neighborhood, on bike trails. So as you donate, we'd love for you all to join, because it brings great awareness. But yeah, so going back to the work with the advocacy is, we know that healthcare is important. I believe that education changes lives, but I also believe that your health is like the most important thing to have, because without your health, it's hard to do other things. And so through our advocacy, we have pushed back on policies. We've put forward different pieces of legislation for people living with MS and those living with disabilities, because a lot of it does impact, the same community. Right? When we talk about how expensive our medication is, and by the way, let's see, it's, I'm now almost 3 years in a oral medication where I pop a blue pill every day instead of injections, and that has changed my life. So, we advocate for fair pricing on medication. We advocate for policies regarding co-pays, because a lot of times, co-pays change on people's medication or coverage as they change jobs, or maybe there's a lapse, in something. So, we've had to we continue to fight back on insurance companies or, you know, any policy that prevents people living with disabilities and MS, that prevents us from living a quality life. So I'm really thank you to all of our advocates, you know, out there that have inspired me to raise my voice. And Brian, I think you know now that I speak nationally on how important it is for people to not be afraid to speak up so that we can advocate for those who cannot.
I think that's right. And you do such a good job of that every day. And you're about 15% of your goal. Jennifer's going to be raising $2,000. Roberta, thank you for donating. Thank you, PLC, for donating. Thanks to Patricia for donating. We got Patricia El Chavez, we got Patricia Dickinson, and we got Roberta Ritchie, and several others this morning have already taken you to 15% of your goal this morning at $335. And so we'll continue to watch that meter rise. We're so pleased to have you do that work. Let's spend, if we can, a little bit of more time. I know that we're right at the top of the hour, and if you can give me another 5 minutes, Dr. Gomez Chavez, I want you to be able to highlight the upcoming Hispanic Heritage Month, which you have been, you know, one of the originals on the Hispanic Heritage Committee. I've been working with it for a long time, many years, and it's been a wonderful part of my journey, and being able to celebrate our culture, our history, and our journey as we celebrate and embrace that story and that culture. Can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect in the upcoming Hispanic Heritage Month?
Sure. Well, we want to invite everyone to join us September 15th. We're going to have a virtual kickoff with the governor, the mayor, all of our wonderful leaders across the state and in different communities to celebrate the contributions that our Hispanos, Hispanics, Mexicanos, Latinos have made to the United States. And this is a national month to recognize all the contributions and the great work that from leaders or, you know, different events that have you know, come forth because of the Hispanic Latino voices. And so I want to, I know my co-chair, Irma Ruiz, is out there. Thank you, Irma, for, you know, and Patricia Chavez also co-chaired. She was one of the co-chairs too. And I want to also talk about mentoring Patricia. Actually, Brian, she was one of my mentors as I was a young professional, and I received my first national award from Patricia's effort to put me out there. It was a Verizon National Award, and it was for my work of being chair of the Hispanic Heritage Committee. And I could dedicate the award money, and I think it was $2,500. So I went out to Long Beach, got my check and all my electronics. But what was cool is that $2,500 from that award started as our seed money for the Hispanic Heritage Committee, which we put into the foundation at the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce. So that's how we started getting funding for that. And thank you, Patricia, and everyone who's helped with the Hispanic Heritage effort.
And we should, that's a perfect place to also say that building upon that $2,500 that Patricia El Chavez helped you obtain because of you getting some well-deserved recognition from Verizon, we have our consistent patrona that leads us in getting funding every year, the Honorable Clarissa Peña, right?
Yes. Councilwoman Clarissa Peña, who has been with our committee. She was one of the founders, as you were. There were many, many different founders. Alex Romero, Dr. Lawrence Roybal, Idalia Lechugatena, former representative. I mean, we have so many, Clara Padilla Andrews, former Secretary of State. We Patricia Chavez as well. So many wonderful founding members, and Clarissa has been witnessing all our work throughout the last 14 years and came to us about 4 years ago and said, you guys need funding. I'm going to put in a proposal so that you all can get funding. And that's helped us do this great work.
So we'll make sure on Cafecito con Colon that as we get closer to that date, which is now only 3 weeks away, folks, to kick off Hispano Heritage Month, and we're going to celebrate that Hispanic Heritage Month in fine fashion. I know that Patricia has supported us with our kickoff every year, and now she's shouting out that she could find a way to do that via Zoom, and she's always stepping up with her company to help us and highlight beautiful, beautiful children who embrace dance with the Southwest Theater. I am so grateful for her and all that she does. I want to say thanks to Chris Laraniaga for supporting your MS fundraiser and encouraging others to do the same on there. Elizabeth Aiken, great to see you this morning. And there's just, I hope, Dr. Gomez Chavez, you'll go back and look at some of these warm comments that people have placed on this page this morning as we've enjoyed our time together. Is there any kind of last thought that you want to share with us? I know we're 5 after the hour, and I just want to give you a chance to close out strong. I know that we could spend hours on any one of these given topics, but why don't you close it out for us this morning? Yeah. And you know what? Let me just say that before you close, Kenny Thomas, one of your adopted UNM students, Albuquerque High, UNM, NBA, now community impact leader, will be on Cafecito con Colon on Thursday. So he had to reschedule because of his travel technical difficulties because he was out of state. And then I had to reschedule on Friday because I had obligations down at the Spaceport America. And then tomorrow I've got my Records and Archives Commission meeting at the exact same time as Cafecito, so we won't be on Cafecito. And then I think I'm doing the Jewish Federation board meeting on Wednesday. And so it looks like, unless I can squeeze one in on Wednesday, it looks like we might be on hiatus again this week until Thursday. But Thursday will feature Kenny Thomas, one of your UNM students, and Hitos.
I love him so much. You know, I want to end with this. It's never too late. I look at Kenny, I look at a lot of students who, you know, look at their educational careers and think, oh my God, you know, I never reached this goal, or they stopped out for some reason and they're looking back and think, God, I want to go back, but I'm this age, or a lot has happened. And so I tell everybody, it is never too late. It's never too late because the educational system is there. You're still getting older every year. So whatever it is that you want to do, it's never too late to go back and do it. I didn't get my doctorate until I was 45. It was something that I wanted to do, but then, you know, I went undergrad and graduate, and then I got sick with MS, and then I started raising a family, a beautiful family, by the way. My daughter's back at Penn State.
We didn't even get to
my
talk
son
about
is
the kids, the golfing star, and your
my son is a golfer at Albuquerque High. We're so proud of him. But so, you know, I often tell my own kids, you know, it's never too late, because, you know, it's there. The opportunities are there. They might be different. You might have changed, but it's okay. It's okay. As long as you can still breathe this beautiful life, then, you know, do everything in your power to reach your full potential. And so I want to end with what my grandmother, who just recently passed away, and she inspired me to never forget my beautiful Hispanic culture. And she always used to tell me, poco a poco se anda lejos. So little by little, you will go far. So as you reach your journey, your goals, it's never too late. Start somewhere, and little by little, poco a poco, you will get there. It was such a pleasure being here. And I hope that to be here again to give you progress closer to the MS bike ride, as well as we launch Hispanic Heritage Month.
You've got it, Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez. It's never too late. Yo te quiero mucho, Dr. Jennifer
amigo.
Gomez Chavez. Make sure you donate to her MS ride. You've got the link. I pinned it on the comments section here, so don't miss out to be able to support this incredible Wonder Woman. She is a superhero in my life and in the lives of so many people who she encounters, whether it's through the Hispanic Heritage Committee, whether it's through the MS Society, or the University of New Mexico Health Sciences Center, Enlace, LULAC, HRT. She has made a difference in so many spaces and places, but most importantly, in the lives of students who engage at the University of New Mexico for success. We love you very much. We're grateful for you. We're going to reach out, poco a poco. We're going to make progress every day in the state of New Mexico, Tierra de Mañana. And somebody said yesterday, we talk about this being the land of tomorrow, the Tierra de Mañana, and it's always negative. But what they said yesterday on Start Bragging and Stop Bagging on the radio show, they said, let's turn that around. Let's flip it on its head and say, it is the land of tomorrow because our future in New Mexico is bright. We've got so many great things to look forward to. Mañana, we are looking forward. We are forward-looking people who are doing better today than we were yesterday, and tomorrow we will be better than today. And thank you for being Cafecito colleagues on Cafecito con Colon. Make sure you reach out tomorrow to somebody during the 9 o'clock hour because he won't be with me. Reach out to them, let them know that they may be in isolation, but they're not alone. Our numbers are down in New Mexico. We are the shining star in the Southwest on beating COVID-19. We've got to stay disciplined, keep ourselves in groups of 5 or less, especially during the Labor Day weekend. So let's hold strong, be safe, love one another. Poco a poco, the land of enchantment is our beautiful little place, heaven on earth. Thank you for Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez for all you do. Have a great day.
Muchas gracias.
Bye-bye
Adios.
now.
Bye.